Okay, hey eavesdroppers. This is the second time I'm doing this message, just because I didn't really like the way the first one was coming out. It was kind of confusing. So, first of all, I want to say Happy Mother's Day to all those mothers out there. Know that that are actually doing a good job and being a good mother, or whatever that aspect of being a good mother is. Know that you're appreciated. Even from people that aren't your mothers. So, and all of you new mothers, happy first Mother's Day. And also happy birthday to all the babies born close to Mother's Day. That might, hopefully that that mother realizes that they're the best Mother's Day present you could ever have. So, what I want to talk about today is, I was talking about shadow work in the last video, and I mainly highlighted on, the lying and the manipulation and deceit and, home wrecking and all those things, or whatever, whatever your shadow problem is. But there's another aspect to it that you also have to balance out, and that is the unconditional love aspect of yourself. And there is a such thing as unconditional love. And I kind of toyed with this when I was, trying to understand spirit. And one of the things that I would say was like, well, God doesn't even love his children unconditionally. He made like 600 laws that they had to pass, and obey before they could get into heaven. And that just sounds impossible. But then, I had gotten a spiritual download, and it dawned on me, what it was, what all that was really about, and it's not that God, a lot of people think that, God's turned his back on Israel and on the Israelites, and that's absolutely not true. He hasn't turned his back. Spirit doesn't turn his back on anybody, but what it is like, if you imagine, we'll use a mother for example. Take a mother that has this child that, she's got all these hopes and wishes and dreams about what this child could possibly be, and she goes about her mothering, trying to guide this child into being the most of whatever this child is going to be, to the best of her ability. And so when you parent, you set rules for your kids. You set rules. And, a lot of times I noticed growing up that the rules would be a little bit different from boys and girls. And, I never really understood that until I had a bunch of girls and no boys. But, anyways, so if you imagine a mother who's got all this love for this kid and the hopes and dreams of everything it'll be, and you set these rules for this kid, but then the kid just keeps breaking the rules and breaking the rules and breaking the rules. Well, how much it hurts that mother, that the kid wouldn't, at least have enough respect and place the same amount of value in the things that, that the mother, seen that was, needed to be valued and set the rules around. And so you have this hurt mother, about this kid, and this kid just won't straighten up and won't straighten up. He won't fly right. He won't follow the rules. He gets in trouble all the time. You just know this kid's going to end up in jail, da-da-da-da. And so it hurts the mother a lot. It does. It hurts the kid a lot. I mean, it hurts the mother a lot more than it hurts the kid even realizes. The kid doesn't even realize how much it hurts the mom. And so you got two different kinds of moms. I think you got moms that'll, let the kids bend the rules because they love their kids unconditionally, and they don't, no matter what their kids do, they're always going to love their kids, and they're always going to be there for their kids, and they're always going to bail their kids out, and they're always going to do this and do that. But is that unconditional love? No, that's enabling, and that's something that you got to look at too when you're doing your shadow work. Are you an enabler, And and if you do your shadow work and you realize, okay, well, yeah, I let this person talk shitty to me, but I still, serve him like, he's the master, even though he's treating me like shit, because then you're not, then you're not a partner when it's like that. You're a slave. You're a slave because you enabled that person to enslave you into, you're training that person basically how to treat you. And so God doesn't turn, or spirit, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't turn his back on anybody. He just can't deal with the pain because people won't act right. They won't do things in a manner, to show him that, hey, I love you, so I'm going to follow these rules or whatever. And if you imagine one person betraying you, imagine 6 million people betraying you and how bad that would hurt. Jesus, no wonder he quit fucking with them and just let them wander around in the desert for 40 years. It wasn't for revenge. It was just because, damn, dude, you guys just don't get it. If you just follow the rules, you'll be right there at the doorway. And on the other side is heaven, or whatever you want to call it. Your great life, or in tarot, the 10 of cups, it's right there on the other side if you'll just freaking act right. And so, it's funny, I just posted a Facebook post the other day that said, I'm going to start telling people that we can't be friends unless you lie or betray or steal from me. I said, maybe then they'll act right out of spite, because that's the attitude, that people tend to have whenever you put boundaries up, they think you're just trying to tell them what to do, and that's not what a boundary is. A boundary is something that you put in place so that you don't become an enabler of somebody's life, and I've seen that played out in my own life here very recently, where I had set a boundary for somebody. I said, okay, well, this is like the third, fourth time that we've done this, and I'm going to let you come back because I love you, and I know how much I love you, and I really feel like, you can just benefit from my love, just being, a caring person and understanding that, and being so, and I was so understanding about everything this person was going through at the time, when I would kind of tell people about it, they're just like, oh my God, you actually did that for him? And I was like, yeah, I did, because I knew his heart was broke. I knew that, that he either felt, he felt stupid. I didn't want him to feel stupid. You should never feel stupid for loving somebody. And they're just like, oh my gosh, well, I would have said, a couple of responses I got, well, like, God dang, everything you're telling me he did to you is, or that what happened to him was exactly what he did to you, but on a way bigger scale. Like, how could you sit there and comfort him through that? At least, did you ever want to, like, make a point of, well, you did that to me, which I did, in later conversations, trying to make him make the connection, and I said, no, because that's the last thing that's not helping somebody, recover from their heartbreak. Is like, okay, well, that's what you get. So you did that to me. That's exactly what you did to me. So that's what you get. That's your karma. No, I'm not going to say that. Because that's not helping him. That's just pouring salt into the wound, really, and so, like I said, I'm pretty positive. I said it later when we got into some, pretty heavy arguments about the whole situation, but, I never wanted it to be, for him to associate me having resentment for that, with what I could still do for him despite the resentment, but, and I had told him, if you come back, this happens again, then I'm seriously gone. Like, I am seriously gone, because at this point there's a pattern. We talked about patterns a little bit, and, I can't control what other people do. And I gave up a long time ago really trying to control what anybody does, you know. I know that my life has been upheavaled, you know, by, you know, what other people do. I can't control what other fucking people do, you know. But I can also recognize, you know, that by not setting stronger boundaries throughout the course of the relationship with him and with everybody that come around us, you know, that I was enabling everything, every betrayal, I enabled it. Everything that happened, I enabled it, you know, and I, you know, felt maybe a little entitled, you know, at times, you know, like, you know, dude, you could have at least left me some money for the electric or, you know, whatever, but I had already trained him that, you know, he didn't have to put out for me like that, you know, so I trained him basically to treat me shitty. You know, so that was my fault. That was definitely my fault. But at the same time, I can't imagine the pain and the hurt that he went through when I actually left. Like, it was the hardest thing that I've ever done, is just get up and leave and remove myself from the pattern. Because I couldn't mentally, emotionally, and even physically, like, go through it anymore, you know? And I'm not going to, you know? And I guess maybe he just counted on you know, me always being that little soft place to land after he went and dicked around and did what he did, and you know, that he could always just come back and I would, you know, patch him up and then he'd feel good again, and then as soon as he did, he'd just turn around and do the same shit. You know, I had to put a stop to it for myself. You know, I had to stop being the enabler. And so you know, in light of all that, you got to look at that part of your shadow work too, you know, is like, when is giving too much love or showing too much love or trying to live up to what, you know, you think unconditional love is, you know, there still has to be a limit to the shit, you know. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional tolerance, you know, of bullshit and just, you know, it's okay to hurt me, it's okay to do this shit to me, you know, because I'm going to cry about it and I'm going to hurt about it. And, you know, if you stay away long enough, maybe I might forget about it a little bit and just, you know, miss you so much that I'm going to let you come back, you know. And I've been that way with all my relationships, and in the reverse way probably for my children, you know. And recently I had a talk with my kids, you know. And I just said, I'm just at a point in my life where, you know, I stood in the same spot, you know, for 26 years and just did my thing, and I didn't cause nobody really any trouble in their lives, you know, as far as, you know, what I had seen my other family members cause. You know, I wasn't constantly begging people for money. I wasn't, you know, constantly raising hell or going to jail or any of that stuff. I just kind of existed, you know, and thought, well, maybe, you know, maybe they'll come around or whatever. And then, but I stood there, not really moving forward, not really growing, not really doing anything. I studied the spirit, you know, but I still just stood there, you know, for basically 26 years. I stood there, and after following their rules and doing all that, and I'm still standing there watching the backs of people walking away, turning around on me, and I'm still trying to figure out, like, you know, how come, you know. And so an interesting thing happened at the beginning of the year. I was hospitalized, and one I was in there for about a week or so, and one time I woke up and I looked over and I was kind of startled, and my mother was sitting there, you know, and she's just, you know, I thought, oh, good, you know, she's checking on me. She's checking in on me. You know, that's cool, because I had told everybody, I said, don't tell nobody I'm in the hospital, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da. And, you know, but she started griping at me, you know. She's like, well, why wouldn't you have told us this and this and this and this? And, but, you know, at the same time, I'm thinking, well, why would I have told you? You know, I haven't gotten an invitation to Christmas or to any, you know, family functions or anything. You know, I don't call and ask if I can come either, but at the same time, you haven't really put out the effort, for that you wanted me to keep you informed on shit like this, just because you've not put any effort to include me in your lives, and, and this was after, all said and done, and, I chose really to quit talking to my mom and dad, just because of some previous shit and other videos I've already discussed, because of them behaving that way towards me, and casting their black magic, whether they think that's what it was or not, it didn't really show me that they were too proud of me or they really wanted me around, and nobody was saying, hey, we're having Christmas dinner, we're having Thanksgiving dinner, or so-and-so's birthday, why don't you come out to the house, and or at least giving me the option to say no if I didn't want to come, and so after that little thing, I thought, okay, well, she came and seen me in the hospital and this and that. Well, then I had found out, after I got home and going through my papers and stuff and had found out about, dying on the surgery table, well, I texted her about it, and her response was, I had just told my mom, oh my God, I died on this surgery table, and I had to, told her all these things, I'm trying to reach, I'm reaching, she reached, I reached back, and her response was, well, that's something I would talk to the doctor about, and I don't really know what I was expecting, but it wasn't something that was so nonchalant, and it just almost kind of sounded like, well, maybe you should talk to the doctor about why you just didn't go ahead and die. It's kind of how I took it. It's like, okay, well, now you know why I don't include you in anything, because when I need support or, something through that was kind of an emotional thing for me, then that's the response I get. So I guess that's that. And so, I'm sorry, I'm getting text messages on my phone. But anyways, and so I have been, in a lot of self-reflection about it, and, thinking about the shadow work and all that, and the thing is, I was a little emotionally neglected as a kid. Nothing horrible, I still love the shit out of the people I love. And, I had just always vowed not to make them ever think that I turned away from them, because I didn't love them. It was never about that I didn't love anybody that I turned my back on, or as I said, ever just stood still, I haven't really turned my back on anybody, my parents weren't, I know I've said, some things, and those are all true things. They're all true. But my parents weren't really bad people per se. They just got kind of fucked up ways about going about things. And, just very disregarding of other people, of the damage, that what they think they're doing is a good thing isn't necessarily a good thing for the damaged, And so, that's when after all this has happened, with me having to send my kids away, and I didn't have to, but I did for them, for their, to help them heal, and listen to the shit that was being said to me in that argument with my mom. There's no misunderstandings when somebody is saying something about somebody that they really shouldn't be saying it about that person. They, need to be, well, why don't you go ask that person, or whatever, like your preconceived formed opinions or whatever you want to call them, and so I'm not really here to talk down on anybody, and I'm not here to try to be better than anybody. The only person, and I've said this before so many times to so many people, the only person that you ever need to be worried about being better than is this person you were yesterday. And if somebody else has a problem with that, and they want to call you out for trying to be better than somebody or this and that, well, you know what? That's what you tell them. I'm just trying to be better than the motherfucker I was yesterday. And if you are really having this many issues with it, then maybe you need to step up your game, you know, and quit worrying about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, you know, and, you know, kind of put it like that, you know, but don't ever make somebody feel like just because you're trying to change your ways or, you know, do this or do that, you know, or whatever, that just because it doesn't vibe with them anymore, because you're not enabling their habits, or you're not right in their face showing them love, or whatever it is, that it doesn't mean anything other than, you know, I loved you the best I could. I love you the best I can, you know, and I'm not really receiving back what I feel like I'm, you know, putting in. And I know it sounds real transactional, but it kind of is. You know, if you can't pour from an empty cup. And so if you're an enabler, that's all you do is pour and pour and pour and pour and pour. And you just train people to like, okay, well, I can get this, and this out of this person, and I ain't got to really put too much effort in towards them or this. They're going to do it anyway. You know, and that's a big part of shadow work too. You know, you got to understand where your role is, even when you think it's the best, you know, the best role that you could be, or, you know, whatever. It's like, you know, don't mistake my kindness for weakness. But I kind of trained everybody to do that. And so when I made the decision to come here, I talked to my girls the other day, and I said, you know, I'm just at the point where I know what kind of person I am. And I think I'm a fantastic person. I don't know why everybody don't want me in their lives, you know? And, but the fact is maybe I didn't make them feel that way. For whatever reason, I didn't make them feel that way. And so they may not want me around because I make them feel bad about themselves somehow, you know, just by being me. And so I'm where I'm at. I'm planted. I'm firm. But now anybody that wants to be in my life, now y'all got to come and show me. You got to come show me that's, you know, I'm thankful, you know, for the lessons my parents taught me. And I'm really unfortunate for the ones that they didn't learn. And I'm really unfortunate for the ones that I'm learning now that probably could have saved me a lot of bullshit throughout my whole 47 years of being here. I want to give special props to a couple people. One of them is my kid's great-grandmother. You know, when I met this woman, I thought she was the most just vile person almost, you know, just the way that I seen her do her grandkids and stuff, you know, and the things that they would tell me, you know, the black magic they cast on me about her, you know. But she's been a part of my life for 20 years, and there's been a lot of ways when she's been a mother to me, when I, you know, didn't want to go to my own mother, or couldn't get my own mother to you know, support me the way that she did. And so, I'm not saying no names, but you know who you are. So a very, very special Mother's Day to her. And on behalf of Spirit, from your daughter, who's with Spirit, she says Happy Mother's Day too. And so, anyways, I'm going to go ahead and close this. I hope you got the message, you know, about the shadow work and stuff. And you know, don't enable people to act like spoiled brats. Don't enable people to take advantage of you. Don't enable people to use the goodness in you to fill themselves back up so that they can go out there and turn around and betray you again because they know that you'll be there. You know, at some point, that is also a pattern, and you have to figure out where and how you got to break that, you know, because as long as you enable people, you know, to make you feel any, you know, one way or another towards something, you enable that too, you know. And so I know a lot of people have probably, I've gone through my life with a lot of people that seemingly just hate me for no reason, just because I exist, just because I'm here. you know. And in the beginning of this channel, I posted some shit. Now all those motherfuckers now y'all got a reason, I guess. You know, and I'm fine with that too, because I came out here with ground zero, you know. I left everything that I could have lost back there, but I ain't turned my back on nothing. You know, I still talk to my kids, and I still got love for a lot of people back there, you know. I can't unlove anybody. You know, I think if you've ever truly loved somebody, you can't ever unlove that person. No matter what, but you can disable them from causing you more stress and pain and, you know, betrayal and whatever, you know. So if you're going through life, you know, thinking that you know, that you're just a victim of this and that, well, you're not really a victim. You're kind of a villain, an enabler villain, you know, or whatever you want to call it. And so, but anyways, I'm going to close with that. So again, happy Mother's Day to all you guys, all you eavesdroppers. And I think I'll get this. Oh, and I've changed the thing on my, what should be, may change colors and this and that, because I ran across another influencer that also uses a blackout screen like that. And so I'm going to change it up so I'm not copying her, and, you know, taking away from, you know, from her stuff. But, anyways, all you eavesdroppers out there, well, thanks for sitting there listening to me while I talk to myself in the dark.